All right, now 3-point perspective. And I'm going to put the horizon line right about, well, higher up. I know it's kind of boring. I've been doing that same thing, but for consistency's sake. You can put it other places and stuff. And the other thing I would say, I've been showing you these, and what the heck happened there? So much for that. I've been showing you these, and I've been including the vanishing points on the page. Sometimes you can include the vanishing points outside of the picture plane. And people tape their paper down to the tabletop and then kind of make a mark with tape on the tabletop somewhere where the vanishing point would be, and using the ruler to go beyond that. Because in reality, we don't see especially for your final on this one where you're using perspective, you don't always see those vanishing points in the picture plane. They're off in the distance. So that's one thing to think about. Like, you could even do a little sketch and then kind of crop into where the scene would be. Anyhow, but let's not get confused. So 3-point perspective, we got one very similar to 2-point. Uh-oh, went outside the thing. And I'll put it over here. There we go. All right. Looking at my paper and looking at my screen are two different things. And then we end up with a very similar to 2-point perspective, same sort of beginning. Okay, and then it's even more so. It's going to feel just like 2-point perspective. And we'll do the little dash lines. But that idea, like I was saying, the idea that you would see the vanishing points in the picture, isn't often the way that you then see a framed image. Okay, now the big difference, or the difference. Instead of these lines being parallel with each other, they are tapering to a vanishing point, and that vanishing point will usually be on the opposite side of those. Now, if I put the building high up here on the horizon line, you are going to get sort of this different, kind of more odder kind of image, but it still can be fun. So I'm going to put that vanishing point, the third one, is in line with that first line you draw. Okay? So then these lines, now, so if I decide I want to start here, I can take this, bring it down, and I will miss my vanishing point, but close enough for. Same thing with this guy. Gal, whatever. Line, Joe, it's just a line. All right, look at that. Wonderful job being off. Anyway. So that would be over there. Okay, so it's pretty much a lot like 2-point, except instead of just being the extreme, on the edge, just being that, there's also this sort of you float going up, like in this one. You're going, if you imagine yourself looking from the top down, like the building is really tall, like if this is a building. And then you imagine, if you want to have buildings that are sort of in line with that, then you get into, so if there's another building over here, let's see if I can actually hit that vantage point. And we'll put it in line, somewhat in line with this one, and say that's going to be the edge of my building. I want to should be taller or shorter or taller or just about the same. I guess we keep it in the same plane. So that's that edge, And then if this is going to be the other edge, we go there like that. I'll just put dashed lines there. Okay, so that line is going all the way over there. That one. And if this was the edge of that building, so this would have come all the way up. And this point here goes that way. This point here goes in that way. All right, so I could continue to like this building, and make them along, or I could move them off of that. Like these could be over. I don't know, maybe not. But what you don't, so the one that you start with, or I guess the point where your eye is where that first, this vantage, sorry, I should have made a line. Vanishing point is going to straight in line with this first line. Okay, if you're doing kind of this setup. If this building wasn't here, you could kind of get rid of that and say if you had another building over here, still use this, but like there'd be an empty space there. But you'd set it up first. But all of these would go to this one. All of those, we'll call them verticals right now. Okay. That's 3-point perspective. And again, if you get outside of that, or, you know, sometimes if you're right, this building back here on the right, let's make a line. This sometimes throws me because everything's essentially, if I put it there, I get a little bit more of a you don't see the top of it. Yeah. But it seems it starts as it gets closer to the same as the in 2-point, and you know, you get that, you lose the top. Anyway, and eventually you'll get, you know, we flip it over and there are giant things falling from the sky again. All right, 3-point perspective. Have fun.